listening to the Viva El Birdos podcast with Jake Wood, Gabe Simons, and Scott Plaza. The Viva El Birdos podcast.
Welcome into the Viva El Birdos podcast. As always, I am your host, Jake Wood. If you enjoy this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all of your favorite audio streaming platforms. We are privileged to be joined by Nate Rasmussen of Overslotbaseball.com tonight. Nate began covering amateur players with Prospects Live. He is Scout School certified and is a former pitching coach for Bushnell University. Nate, of course, now is teamed up with Joe Doyle over at Overslot, and they do fantastic work. Please make sure you take time to go over to overslotbaseball.com and check out all of their great content. Nate, welcome to the show. Are you ready? Are you more ready to talk Cardinals draft picks, or for your head to hit the pillow after a marathon of content over the last 48 hours?
You know what, Jake? Normally I would be excited to sleep, but I'm really excited to talk about the Cardinals draft. We'll get into it a little bit later, but I'm pretty bullish on what the Cards are doing here. So sleep can wait for now.
Oh, hell yeah, brother. You know what? I'll save the 18th round pick, Gabe Camacho, for later in the show, so we might as well start from the top. You know, the Cardinals selected prep outfielder Trevor Condon out of Etowah High School in Georgia. For a majority of Cardinals fans who only heard of Condon's and, you know, pretty much all of these players' names for the first time yesterday, tell us what we need to know about the type of player the Cardinals just drafted at 13.
Yeah, Trevor Condon, first of all, amazing baseball player. I had him ranked as my 10th best prospect in the draft. A lot of people really liked him heading into the draft, and a big part of that was the kind of just person he is. He plays with his hair on fire, insert any of those adjectives. He's just a gamer, and it's so clear when you watch him play. Like, it's really like fan favorite type of material. He had a lot of suitors in the 10 to 20 range. He was a real hot ticket item in this class. He's an aggressive player. He's physical for an 18-year-old. It's a very reactive, kind of unorthodox swing, which is what had some people on the fence about him this early in the draft, but it's led to a lot of success that you can't really question, and I think it's going to play very well in pro ball. It's a really good plate approach. He'll put up 80 grade runner times, 70 grade runner times, dynamic center fielder, like could be a Gold Glove in the future. That is how good he is at center field. It's really talented in all aspects of the game. Above average bat speed is going to help kind of raise that floor up. The contact quality is pretty good. He's on the ground a little bit too much right now, though. So probably the first thing we'll look at as he matures, a couple years in the minor leagues, I want to see that ground ball rate decrease a little bit. Start maybe pulling the ball in the air a little bit more, like everyone wants, to get some more power. But there aren't too many holes to pick with him unless you're one of the people who's unsure about the swing. But I'm pretty comfortable with it, Jake.
You know, we've heard, player comps of like PCA, Lenny Dykstra. I've even heard whispers of like a Kevin McGonigal. Like, is there any of those players that stand out above the rest in context to like a Trevor Condon?
I would not go PCA. I think the hit tool is better than the power projection right now. Some people have put as high as a 60 grade plus hit tool on Condon. I'm more in the 50 to 55 range. I think the power could creep up to 45, 50 as well. So maybe a little bit more reminiscent of, let's see here. I think that there's some shades of a guy like Max Clark in there. Really good defensive center fielder, pretty good plate approach. They're both aggressive in different ways. I would say Condon definitely swings the bat, maybe a little bit more than Max Clark, but kind of similar from the hit tool to power ratio. Clark might have a slightly more comfortable hit tool right now, though.
At pick 32, the Cardinals took their third Tennessee Volunteer pitcher in the last two seasons in Tegan Kuhns, after taking Liam Doyle and Tanner Franklin last season. Well, what's the skinny on Kuhns, and what kind of value did the Cardinals get at 32?
I would say he went right around where we expected him to go. At times this year, Kuhns could have been maybe a top 20 pick in some mocks that we did over at Overslot. But it's a really safe pick that also has that kind of projection or upside we're looking for. It's a really good 4-pitch mix. He's kind of had an up and down season at Tennessee, including being sent to the bullpen at one point. But that Tennessee team had by all means kind of an interesting year. Really good mechanics, but it's a lot of effort. Kind of similar to like the Liam Doyle conversations of last year. Like, he throws with a lot of effort. People will always be slightly scared by that, but Kuntz fills up the zone. So really nothing to worry about there. There was a ton of strikes. Really great fastball that I think analysts think that you can get a little bit more out of at the pro level, but as is right now, it's a 60-grade pitch. The locations could use a little bit of help. I think that's why the fastball plays down sometimes. He leaves it too low in the zone. It's more of a carry pitch, chase up out of the zone, get your whiffs up there. Slider's really good. That's his main put away. His changeups actually flash pretty well to lefties, and he has a curveball that works well. So it's like one of the more complete 4-pitch arsenals right now of almost any draft-eligible pitcher. It's just really projectable arm. I think he slid a little bit. This year was underwhelming at times. When you look at like the season stats, it looks spectacular, like a really great season. There were times when Kuntz just wasn't performing up to the lofty expectations a lot of us had on him, which probably caused him to fall a little bit further in the draft than maybe we were expecting.
Would you say this is probably, if all things fall right, probably a mid-rotation arm type projection?
I think a number 3 starter makes a lot of sense as kind of the ceiling, most likely. I think you have a built-in number 4 starter in Tegan Kuntz, though.
Awesome. Moving right along to pick number 50, Rocco Maniscalco made some waves at the scouting combine a couple weeks ago, unleashing 97-mile-an-hour rockets from shortstop. Does the upside of Maniscalco rival that of Condon's, or do you think those two players are completely different in terms of like tiers that they fall into?
Rocco Maniscalco's in a league of his own. It's almost like, it's really fun to talk about. This guy's barely like 17 years old. I think maybe the youngest player ever drafted. You might have to help me on that. He's so young, and he's one of the best defenders we've got, which is not something you really expect from these players who reclass up and are the youngest. You don't expect them to like have these super carrying tools. You expect it all to be projection. There's not a whole lot of projection left in the glove. Like, he is going to be one of the better shortstop defenders in the minor leagues right off the bat. You look at someone like Billy Carlson, who got drafted last year, revered for the glove. Maniscalco is most likely better than that. This is
wow,
really incredible stuff. And this isn't clickbait or anything like that. I think he's maybe the second best defender in the draft behind Rock Chalowski. It's hard to go away from Rock. There are some good outfield defenders who definitely make a case. As far as shortstop prospects go, Maniscalco right up there. Really big arm like you saw at the combine. He did struggle a lot in high school games this spring. The bat's coming around. The underlying metrics aren't super favorable on the bat. But when you draft a guy like this, you have so much time. This is a guy who's got 4, 5, 6 years in the minor leagues ahead of him to really work on that bat and just let him mature a little bit more. I think he could reach double-digit home runs with like a middling average, maybe like a 240 average with like 12 or 14 home runs makes this like a premium player in the league. Like, that might be a 4 or 5 WAR shortstop just based on the defense alone and average hitting. If you get him to 100 WRC plus, this draft pick is an absolute slam dunk. And the floor is high enough with a player that's so far away, and just with the defense alone, if you can get to like a 45 hit and 40 power, it's going to be a really nice pick. Really surprised that they were able to get a guy like Maniscalco and Condon together, but by all means, it looks like they're going to make it work.
If the thought was that 4 or 5 years down the track that they were able to move him to, say, third base and be able to pair him on that left side with a Mason Wynn, would that be putting too much pressure on the bat? Do you think that the bat probably doesn't profile that well at third base? Or, because that's kind of where I thought originally that they might be going with that, is like, hey, this might be, the third baseman of the future kind of thing. Would it take some pretty outlier type steps forward for him to probably fit that mold of like a future third baseman type?
The bat would have to develop a lot for him to move off of shortstop in any circumstance. I think if the shortstop position was full, you don't play Rocco Maniscalco at another position, most likely. He's one of those guys that's just such a good shortstop that you would hate to see him play a non-premium position. Maybe you could try him in center field. He's not the worst runner ever. The arm's incredible. But I would imagine that the plan is to keep him at shortstop for as long as humanly possible.
Interesting. Well, that's all. I mean, that's all really good stuff. I was just, I didn't know that the bat was that far behind, but that's good information to know. At picks 68, the first of the 2 picks the Cardinals received in the Brendan Donovan trade, the Cardinals selected outfielder Andrew Williamson out of UCF. Tell us more about Williamson and the skill set that he's bringing to the St. Louis organization.
Yeah, Williamson's just bringing like a lot of power, basically. Kind of one of those typical college outfielders nowadays. It's like middling whiff numbers with really great EVs and barrel rates. He's been a strong performer at 2 years at UCF. Kind of interesting that you see a guy play like 3 years at a school like UCF. So I like to give him a little credit for that. He could have left and gone to any SEC program in the country last year, but he stayed at UCF. Just a really cool little thing there in this landscape of college baseball. He's a little undersized, which makes him kind of more of like an average power projection, but it's just blossomed over the last year and a half. Struggles a little bit with fastballs up. There's some whiff on velo in general. Sometimes a little bit of chase. It's pretty average chase rates. I'd say probably unlikely to play center field in the pros. I think best case scenario, you're looking at a strong corner outfield, like fourth outfield type. Maybe some DH days mixed in there. Probably going to crush righties. And hits the ball really dang hard. So just for context, it's 97th percentile, 90th percentile exit velocity. There's a lot of percentiles in what I just said, but one of the best power hitters in the country last year.
We love percentile conversations, so bring it all. We love the context. At 72, the Cardinals put their hiking boots on, headed out to the mountains of West Virginia, and they selected right-hander Dawson Montesa. According to pre-draft rankings, this was a bit of a reach, but, this could also be a below-slot deal to use the savings on a Maniscalco. We talked about that a little bit, pre-show. What's the appeal for a Dawson Montesa for you, Nate?
I think the whole appeal is savings here. At Overslot, we had him ranked 269th, so obviously a bit of a jump here. With that being said, there's enough clay in this build to make him still an exciting underslot option that helps pay for the prep guys at the front. He transferred from Adelphi to West Virginia this year. It's like a mid-90s fastball. It's taken a big jump. In 2026, it's like a deception-carried profile, which makes him a safer pick than a lot of others because he's always just going to play up a little bit because hitters just have a harder time seeing him. It's a big two-plane curveball as his main secondary. I think the curveball's kind of having a renaissance right now, so I always like seeing these pitching prospects with this really nice curveball. Fastball and changeup have a little bit of life. I think 5 starters, the hope, he's not a good extender, which just kind of immediately removes him from the super high upside conversation because the release trains aren't crazy enough to push him into this high upside kind of mix. You hope he's a starter, maybe a swing starter between AAA and the MLB, but I think that serves a pretty valuable role just given the amount of money you're probably going to allocate to him.
Certainly. The thing for me and most players, their curveball was about as fast as my fastball was, and so seeing some of these guys, you talk about watching a beautiful curveball. Oh, it's my favorite thing from the pitcher's mound. It was releasing that thing and just watching it drop off the table. So much fun. But that's beside the point. At 86, this is my favorite turn of phrase for this draft. The Red Raider slugger turned Redbird, Caden Ferraro, was the selection. A defensive home is going to be probably his biggest question mark, but the bat is special. So tell us more about the impact that Ferraro can supply.
First of all, that was pretty slick. I really liked it. Caden Ferraro is going to be a DH, all right? People don't want to hear it. If you DH in college, you're most likely a DH in the pros, especially if you don't have any kind of movement traits that are desirable. He's got a good arm. He does not move well at all. This is a guy who had so much helium late in the year. People started kind of actually looking at numbers altogether and looking at chase percentage leaderboards and stuff like that. And Caden Ferraro is near the top of pretty much every single metric that we have on these hitters. It might be one of the best data profiles in the class altogether. It could be like a 55 hit, 60 power guy. If someone's a 60 hit, 60 power, they're borderline Jordan at this point. So just saying, this is a DH who's going to hit really well. It's gap-to-gap approach, which limits some of the in-game power output. You would expect him to have more home runs than he had last year at Texas Tech. He just doesn't pull a ball in the air. He'd rather take that double to the opposite field. It's real bat speed. It's pro-ready bat speed right now. It's a really sound swing. It's kind of just the perfect selection in this range. You get a hitter with such a high floor, but also so much potential. I know that the lack of defensive versatility kind of limits that ceiling, but at the same time, this is a guy who could be one of the better DHs in the league. Maybe you stick him in left field or right field and it works out, but I'm not so sold on that. And you can't take a positionless guy higher than the top 60 or 70. This is one of the best positionless hitters, though, in the whole draft.
terrific. I love the sound of getting more impact bats, and the Cardinals unfortunately playing in a hitter wasteland like Busch Stadium, having dudes who can just simply rake is music to my ears. The final day one pick was shortstop out of Kansas State, D. Kennedy. My favorite question I see from general fans is, why do they draft X position players? They already have player X, Y, and Z at that spot. Can you elaborate on Kennedy and also kind of the benefit of drafting shortstops as like a strategy in professional baseball?
Yeah, so shortstops are the most athletic players in the field for the most part. They're also the best defenders. We typically don't see outfielders be able to move into infield because it requires more technical skill, but infielders can move to outfield pretty easily because it's a less technical position. So when you put all of that together, shortstops can basically play third base, second base, shortstop, center field, right field, left field. Normally shortstops don't end up playing first base or catcher. Stranger things have happened, but that's a lot of versatility for a player. We see it with the Padres. They have, 7 shortstops on their team, and they're playing all over the place. D. Kennedy actually really fits that mold. In my notes here, I have him as more of a utility player long term. I think his value isn't going to be with the glove. It's going to be with the versatility of that glove. He's been a real riser this year, too. This is a guy who wasn't on nearly any radars entering the year and slowly worked himself up to this kind of first-round area. I think that there are real suitors in, the second and third round. I'm really surprised, honestly, that he made it this far. It's kind of a shakier hit tool, but he showed enough impact this year to kind of blur those lines enough. He maximizes contact quality like one of the best players in the draft. The air pull rate, I believe, is 98th percentile. So this guy, the swing is tailored to lift and pull the ball and maximize, the more average raw power that he might have. He doesn't chase a whole lot, but he whiffs, which helps the floor generally. He's selective at the plate. The in-zone whiff is what's going to really be the determining factor of if he's a future pro or if he's more of a guy who can never quite get over the hit tool concerns.
So let's do this. How did you evaluate the Cardinals and the way that they did on day one overall, and then also your favorite pick of theirs from day one, before we move on to day two?
Yeah, just got to be honest, this is my favorite draft class, and it's not just because I'm on Viva Alberto's. It's because they drafted players in spots that I would have taken that player earlier. Condon was 10 on my board. They took him at 13. A guy like D. Kennedy was, I believe, top 70 on my board. This is a guy that they took down the board. Every single one of these guys could have been taken much earlier, aside from Dawson Montesa, who serves a very important role to get all of these guys. But to answer your actual question, I really like Trevor Condon, but as far as value goes, Rocco Maniscalco is one of the sneakier picks. To get that good of a defender is just such a boost to a farm system because you just have this premium tool set that you don't find that often at the most important position in baseball. If you hit on that pick, it might end up being the best player from this draft. If you can hit, at a league average level, It's truly one of the more valuable players. So I don't know how you can't be excited about that, especially since he's so young.
Yeah, the Cardinals did something similar last season with their selection of Ryan Mitchell too. They took the really high upside prepster right in the middle of that 50. I think it was 52 overall, somewhere in that range. But this seems to be kind of where the Cardinals are wanting to really hit on that high upside prep range of player, and we're seeing that now 2 years in a row with the addition of Maniscalco. Let's quickly highlight some of the day two picks. Who are some guys that stood out to you from the Cardinals selections today?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's hard not to talk about Cal Randall, first of all. It might be the best fastball in the class, which just has, an exciting feel to it. It's like a guy you could probably put in a big league bullpen in a year and he'll succeed right away. He really doesn't have any even average breaking stuff for secondary pitches right now. He has an okay changeup, but the breaking balls are really bad. If you can get this guy to just one more usable pitch, some kind of slider that's about average, he's going to be one of the best relievers in the league. It's just right now guys can kind of predict his fastballs coming because it's not great secondary. So being able to get a guy like that who could be a future closer is always really fun. Going down the board a little bit more, Owen Henney is this D2 guy that you guys got from Seton Hill. Didn't know it existed until today. He's a high zone contact, good EVs. He's a draft league standout. So I did want to highlight, you guys took about 4 or 5 different players today that were all playing in the MLB Draft League, a feeder summer ball team. Think just like the Cape Cod League, MLB Draft League serves a really similar purpose. But we have a lot of advanced data, and it's more public in the Draft League. The Cardinals took a surprising amount of guys from the Draft League. It's a popular league, but you guys truly used it to your advantage this year. Just going up and down the board, so many of these guys were playing this summer in the Draft League. So just an interesting thing that I saw. As I go down the board a little bit more, Nick Bond from Cal Poly has thrown 100. That's always fun. Jacob Haley from South Alabama has been up to 97. I think that you guys are going to try him as a starter in the minor leagues. It's a good slider. There's deception in the delivery. All the things you want to see from a small school pitcher that might signal better things are on the way. The last guy I truly want to highlight is Drew Horn, right-handed pitcher from Middle Tennessee. This is a guy who I interviewed back in the fall, got to know him a little bit, playing at the small D1 school. He had a phenomenal 2025, but he was a sophomore, couldn't get drafted. He had a tough 2026. By all means, he took a big step back this year. A lot of pressure on him. He added a bridge pitch breaking ball. He's a shorter frame, so the fastball plays up in the zone a little bit better. He's got these really high spin breakers that have performed well every single year. His changeup's showing flashes. He wins with locations. If this guy can get back to his 2025 form pretty soon, he's just going to be a slam dunk reliever. You could try him as a starter as well. I just believe in the person a lot, and coming from a smaller school in Middle Tennessee, they've done a really good job developing pitching the last couple of years. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's someone that opens some eyes in about a year or two.
On the Cal Randall front, we saw the Cardinals last year take Tanner Franklin out of Tennessee, reliever converted to starter. The way that you were describing Randall sounds a lot like Liam Doyle, who they took last year. Big fastball, you can rely on it heavily. He could be a reliever in a year. Had that splitter that was a workable secondary, but really had no quality, breaking pitch to speak of. And we've seen this season that they started Doyle at Double-A and allowed him to just kind of spam that breaking ball over and over again to really get that good feel for it. Do you think that we could see a similar track for a guy like Cal Randall? Would you try it as a starter just to see what that could do, or do you think that guy is probably just reliever straight out the gate and that's all he's gonna be?
It's definitely within the realm of possibility. When you have that good of a fastball, it would almost be stupid not to try him as a starter because of the value you can extract out of there. I would say it's pretty unlikely just because of the lack of secondary pitches at this point. Even if he adds one pitch, it's probably not going to be enough to start and get past the 4th or 5th inning very often. So I would lean on maybe they try it out, but you'll have to do a lot of work. The player development team, has a project ahead of them trying to add some secondaries in a pretty short turnaround before next spring. So
and then, of course, I have to go back to my guy out of the 18th round because I promised. Gabe Camacho. Let's talk about Gabe Camacho. What are the Cardinals getting? You did the background. You teased that some show you were going to go on was going to ask you about the 18th round pick. Let's get into Gabe Camacho.
The quick context for the listeners here. I put out a tweet just trying to be a silly guy. I said, I go on a lot of podcasts this week, and they always ask me about the 18th round pick that I've never heard of. Some guy who wasn't anywhere near my board, never saw him play. And Jake has taken that and ran with it, and I love it. I'm ready for Gabe Camacho. Outfield first base type from San Diego. He maximizes his contact. A really good air pull bat, which is just nice to see. He's going to perform right away with that. He's young, above average bat to ball, plus raw power is what I had on him. Good first base defender. It might be more average raw power at this point. We'll see. Loud and aggressive swing at times. The video had me a little bit concerned. There weren't a whole lot of super clear angles for me to fully dissect it. It looked like a lot of barrel tip, so we'll see. Definitely a bit of a project. 18th rounder, not a whole lot of expectations, but for an 18th rounder, this guy has the underlying skills, the percentile rankings to maybe say that there's something there in the future. We'll see. He's going to have to hit a lot to continue playing at first base, most likely.
And then let's just touch real quickly on Fresh Corn and who did they take
Colin
in the
Ritchie.
23? Colin Ritchie, that's right. The two that really fell that most had projected in the top 10 rounds, of course. Just touch on those guys really briefly. If by some miracle stroke of luck, not Ritchie's already come out and said that he's going back, but they were somehow by a miracle stroke able to grab Fresh Corn away from his commitment. What would the Cardinals be getting in that profile?
Yeah, just 2 classic insurance picks. I think Fresh Corn was unlikely to be drafted this year just based on how much he can gain from hopefully starting next year. It's like a talented east to west arsenal, so big sweepers, kind of bigger sinkers. He doesn't walk anyone, like truly nobody. I think it's sub 3% walk rate, which is incredible. Up to 96. He was a reliever this year, but he should start in the future, and then his value will be even higher. But if you were to draft him, it was going to cost some money. Probably a top 200-ish talent in the draft. Colin Ritchie was a guy who could have gone on day one. We were really surprised about this one at Overslot. Unlikely to sign, borderline day one talent, plays a pretty good center field, does everything you want with the bat. Definitely at times there are some concerns with the hit tool. This is a guy who must be getting an absolute bag to stay in college, because this is one of the better players in college baseball.
My last question before we go, with the inclusion of NIL now in college baseball, how much more difficult does that make it for major league teams to sign players away from their college commitments? Because no longer is it kind of this under the table bag that these players are getting. It's out there, it's loud, it's proud. Everybody knows that there's money being given to these players, real bonus pool type money. How much more difficult does that make that for these scouting departments to try to decipher who is worthy of trying to sign and pull away from that, and actually being able to go with best player available as a strategy, what is so often commonly referred to as the best strategy to go for when it comes to the Major League Baseball amateur draft?
Yeah, so just to start, I think the C-tier prep prospect is going to go extinct. It already kind of happened this year. The guys who are expected to sign for between $100,000 and $500,000, and maybe even upwards of $1 million, are going to opt to go to school because they can make up a large portion of that money or make more money than they were expected to get when signing. And then they also have another shot at the draft to prove it and go even higher in the future. So this year, there is a real lack of $500,000 prep players that we've seen, in the 12th round and in the 10th round in the previous years. And that's because they all have these college commitments. If I'm going to make $150,000 a year at my college over, in 1 year, that's going to be close to my signing bonus after 3 years, and I get another shot at this thing. I can double dip. So we're going to see, only the best prep players are going to get drafted at this point. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously with the CBA coming up and stuff like that, a lot's probably going to change with the draft. So not too confident in how this is all going to turn out. But right now, it's kind of a scary thing. More college players are probably going to keep getting drafted.
I wanted to, as a quick follow-up, I did want to ask you about that, because as the CBA is coming up, and we've heard the first proposal, which we always know is just absolutely flat out ridiculous, that they're eliminating high school players altogether, prep players from the talent pool. What would that do for the Major League Baseball draft if it was essentially a college exclusive, and in a way, I guess you would look at college almost as if it were single A.
Yeah, you're just offloading the development. College is better than single A at this point. A lot of college baseball, like I said, the SEC might be better than a high A. So you're just it's lazy. You're offloading development. You're taking the fun out of the draft. You're taking the scouting, the full scouting experience out of the draft. Having a range of scouting from 17 years old to 24-year-olds in the draft allows for unpredictability and allows for your scouting department to gain real edges with your team. If you have a really good scouting department right now in baseball, you can win. We see it with the Dodgers. It's incredible. Yeah, they buy players, sure. They also scout, and they put a lot of money into their scouting department, and it pays off for them. That's why they're so good. And as you can see, this is kind of getting me going right now.
No, please go for it. Yeah.
You're taking the parity out of the draft. Not all of it, because you still have to sign the right college guys and stuff like that, but you're just taking so much of the unpredictability that makes this game so great and allows teams to go from bad to good. The White Sox, for example, amazing draft. They've drafted really well for multiple years now, and it's going to turn this franchise around. That's going to be harder. It's just going to be harder to do if they pass rules like that.
You know, you look at teams like the Rays, like the Guardians, like the Brewers, for example, when you were talking about the Cardinals, and it sparked this thought in my brain. You know, the thing about the Brewers in the last few years, how they've really gained an edge is the JUCO players. They're really hitting that market really hard, and I'm wondering if the Cardinals are looking at the draft league as their way to kind of, you know, dive into that specific pool and try to maximize that and leverage that area of the draft. You know, when you said that, I was like, oh, epiphany moment. Like, that's what they're talking about. That's probably what Chaim Bloom has been referencing so much, is like they're looking for every available edge, every opportunity, and every margin to try to get themselves back to where they believe they're supposed to be at the top of the mountain. And, you know, if the MLB Draft League is where they're looking to go for that next available edge, then that's incredibly intelligent, in my opinion, for what they're trying to do. And using the Brewers kind of, you know, map to kind of follow on that.
It's definitely interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard anyone talk about the draft league stuff, but there's a good number of guys, especially after round 10, that you guys took. Like half of them are playing in the draft league, and the D2 player Eddie, I believe. The draft league's awesome because it just adds more data points, adds more security. You know, scouts can recommend players to the draft league as well, so you can put two guys on your board head to head, watch them both play against each other, and see who's better right in front of you. Kind of one of those things. So just expanding some remote options as well is incredible.
Yeah, it's really interesting because nearby here, the Alton River Dragons are a team that is involved in the draft league. So, like, I could, if I had the time, to go pop over and see some of these players. Fortunately, between day job, this job, and raising a family, I really don't have time to go watch, you know, draft league baseball. But if I did, I would certainly be over there. Nate, thank you so much for your time tonight, you know, for coming on the podcast and giving us all this great draft insight. We really appreciate it. You know, real quickly before we go, where can fans go to find your great work and find you on social media?
Yeah, go check out all my work at overslotbaseball.com. You know, the incredible Joe Doyle and our team over there has been pumping out a bunch of content lately. My Twitter is Rasmussen Base, so you can all say hi to me over there. And shout out to Cardinals fans. Thank you so much for having me, Jake. You guys should be really excited about this draft. Truly an awesome experience for your team.
Well, now for the last from 2016 to 2023, 2024, there was what we like to call the long dark period, but I think we're starting to come out of that now with all of what Chaim Bloom has started to implement and do, and the drafting and the development they've brought along. The brighter days are certainly ahead. It's very easy for Cardinals fans to see what is coming up, and I think that, you know, we're as much looking forward as we are, you know, enjoying what's happening in the moment now with the unexpected play that's come from this young, exciting team. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Alberto's podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and hit that subscribe button so you're notified every Monday morning when our newest available episodes are dropped. We will talk to you all next week and bring you more great Cardinals content. Have a great day, St. Louis, and let's go Cards!